Hi and welcome to C3 Life's weekly service. We're so excited to have you with us today. Every Sunday at 10:30 in the UK, we gather in Leeds and in York. But if you're joining us here online, wherever you are in the world, you're part of that moment too. So it's so good to have you here. And whether that's with friends or family or even just on your own, we're just glad you tuned in. Look, if you're flying solo today and loving the experience, why don't you invite someone to join you next week? There's something amazing about sharing these moments with others, and God loves it when His people get together. So in a few moments, we're going to dive into a message from the Bible that's designed to inspire and challenge you. Whether you're just beginning to explore faith or you've been following Jesus for a while, I really do hope that this message will have something for you. After that, we're going to have a moment of worship, and this is your chance to reflect and pray on the message and let it sink in. You can take that time to connect with God, whether you pray or you take a moment to meditate on a scripture or just let the words begin to speak to your heart. Look, we'd love to stay connected as well. If you need prayer or you want to share your story, do not hesitate. Head to c3.life/connect. We'd love to know what's happening in your world. Great. Well, look, let's not wait any longer. Let's dive into this week's service and see what God has in store for us.
Hello, my message today is a conversation that is two ways. You know, there's kind of four subtopics that I want to cover. So the first one is distraction from your conversation with God. The second one is a conversation through adversity. The third one is not maintaining your conversation with God or not having a conversation or a prayer life with God. And the fourth one is a first conversation with God. I'll be kind of doing my message on Samuel. So 1 Samuel, from the first chapter to about the third chapter of Samuel's life. So before he was conceived and after he was conceived as well. But starting from Samuel 1:1. This is the dynamic of the family. So there was a certain man from Ramathia, a Zuphite, from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Samuel, son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives. One was called Hannah and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children and Hannah had none. So this family dynamic was that kind of thing of, it was polygamy. He had two wives. But the purpose of Peninnah was to bear children because Hannah could not. But this family dynamic was problematic, definitely, for Hannah. We see in Samuel 1, verses 1 to 4. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord has closed her womb. This kind of talks about my first point, where the portions have been given to Peninnah and to Hannah, but then jealousy got into the mix. Jealousy was in the mix from Peninnah towards Hannah. Samuel 1 verse 7 says, "This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival would provoke her. She wept and would not eat." So at this point, we saw her rival, which is Peninnah, would provoke Hannah with just saying that you couldn't bear children, you can imagine her saying. And Hannah wanted to have children. But the reality is she did that in church. How triggering must it have been for both of them? To go to the house of the Lord and you're teasing somebody, or to go to the house of the Lord and you're being taunted, ridiculed by somebody. But this is my first point, distraction from your conversation. Peninnah was triggered to take her conversation away from God in the house of the Lord. Because it said whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, Peninnah, her rival, would taunt, would tease her. How many times do we get caught up in other things instead of having our focus with God or on God when we're in church. But this situation was the kind of thing of she was jealous of the portions that was given to Hannah. Peninnah was. You think about it, she gave Elkanah everything he desired, as in bearing children so he could carry on his name. And Hannah didn't, but he loved her and gave her a double portion. Sometimes we do focus on what other people have or what other people do. And then our emotions get caught up and our concentration comes away from God. We need to be at a place where we need to focus on him at all times and not be jealous of other people's situations or giftings. Because that portion that Peninnah got, that double portion that Hannah got, Peninnah's children got portions as well. That is a gift towards us. You know, me, myself, there are giftings what I see other people have. And the reality of me, I think to myself, oh, I wish I could do that. But it's not going to interfere with me and God in the house of the Lord. You know, people who can play and sing at the same time, I wish I could do that. It's something that I just see, and it's like eating and drinking at the same time. It's just something that I can't do. But I do marvel at people that can do it. But I'm not going to get to the point of getting so jealous of their gifting that it distorts my relationship or my conversation with God. But Peninnah, she had a purpose. And the purpose what Peninnah had was for her, was as she did kind of really cruel things to Hannah, Hannah pressed in to God. And this is my second point of a conversation through adversity. Sometimes we come against situations that we have no control over it, but we should be pressing in to God. But sometimes what do we do when we are desperate? What do we do when these conversations feel like they're not going nowhere? Because year after year, Peninnah taunted and teased Hannah. So she was praying for a long time with no assurance of any answer, but she kept on praying. But sometimes we're praying for a long period of time. Sometimes we shut down. Sometimes we sulk. Sometimes we get angry and frustrated at God. Sometimes we stop praying. We have got to be at a point, our daily bread is to pray to God. We cannot be at a point where we dip in and out. We need to keep that level of conversation up with God. Hannah set a godly example with no assurance of the outcome that was going to be in her favor. We see in 1 Samuel 1, 11. And she made a vow saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look at your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. Be true to what we pray, because Hannah had to be true to what she prayed. She prayed a specific prayer, asking God to remember her and give her a son. Sometimes God can call you out on what you pray to him. But this was the foundation for Samuel. Because in the tabernacle where Hannah was praying, where Hannah was praying, Eli, the priest of the time of the tabernacle, he saw Hannah praying. And he thought she was drunk because her mouth was moving, but no volume was coming out. And he thought she was drunk. But the reality is she wasn't. She was deep in prayer, coming to the house of God, her focus just on the task, which is to pray to God. But she understands her commitment to God because she knows that mankind, her husband Elkanah, could not address this situation. Only God could address the situation. So she pressed in and prayed. And we see her answer. 1 Samuel 1 and verse 17. Eli answered, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. This was an indirect answer to Hannah's prayer, because Samuel didn't know what she was praying for. The reality is this: sometimes we can get an answer from God, but are we looking out for where the answer is coming from? Unfortunately, I had a friend of mine that she died in September, and she was diagnosed with a condition, and the doctors gave her a plan of action in order to kind of save her life. But she said, it's only God that's going to heal me. The answer was already given to her. I mean, I didn't know the details until the day of the funeral, when the minister came up and he preached, and he says he was very sorrowful when somebody got an answer, but they only wasn't expecting it in their own way. Only by the voice of God, that I'm going to trust only the voice of God. But in our communication with God, do we know his will and his way of communicating to us? Not all the time it's going to be direct. It can be indirect by somebody's advice that they give you, somebody's encouragement that they give you. Be open to the ways of communication that God is going to provide for you. Samuel 1, verse 1 and 20. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord for him. So this was the start of Samuel's life and the start of Hannah's promise, which I will go into in a moment. But my next kind of subtopic is maintaining a conversation with God or not having a conversation with God. As I just explained, Eli was the high priest of Israel at the time. He was over all the offerings and all the worship. People used to bring their offerings to the tabernacle, and Eli used to preside over it. But Eli had two sons that was evil, that was doing all kind of manner of wicked things in the house of God. They would take the offerings for themselves, what people have given, so the best of the offerings they would take. And they would do some terrible things with the women of the time that came to work in the tabernacle. But my first point, just to illustrate, Eli's relationship with God faded because he didn't use the authority to reprimand his sons. His sons were doing all manner of evil, but who had the authority? Eli had the authority. But could he use the authority? No, because he was weak in his rebuke of his sons. He ignored what he should have done and was complacent in what he should have done with God. He should have been pressing into God. He should have got his authority and his encouragement from God in order to do the right thing over the charge of his sons. 1 Samuel 2:12 says, Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. No regard. But they were priests. They was priests in the house of the God, and they had no regard for him. For me, that even doesn't make sense for them to even be in that position in the first place. So these are one of the things that the sons did. In Samuel 2:22 it says, now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they slept with the woman who served at the entrance to the tent of meetings, or to the tabernacle. They slept with people, women, in broad daylight, in front of everybody, because it says at the entrance of the meeting place, at the tent of meetings. You could imagine in this day and age, if somebody in authority would do them things, a policeman doing them things. And in the media, the policemen have done many things and they've been arrested in quick time. But at this point, nothing happened to the sons. There was, for want of a better word, free to do what they was going to do because they didn't see the authority in their father, and he didn't exercise the authority on his children. But God wanted to warn Eli. He warned him with the people first. In 1 Samuel 2, verse 23, it says, "So he said to them, 'Why do you do such things? I have heard from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. No, my sons, the report I've heard spreading among the people of the Lord is not good.'" And I thought in that situation, I've just read about them sleeping with women. And he's saying, his rebuke towards them is, it's not good. And I think to myself, how has he got to a point that he's not using the authority? He knows what he should do, but was he committed to what he should do? Because I look at it like this. The way that Eli was, he had a relationship with God, but it changed from a relationship to having experience of God. And I don't mean an experience of that his first encounter and his experience God. He knows how God works, but in spite of having a relationship with him. We got to a point as well where Eli was warned by a man of God. So a man of God, so say for instance, another pastor come to his tabernacle to tell him about what his sons were doing. So what his sons were doing went far and wide, that another holy man had to come and say this in 1 Samuel 2:29. It says, "Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offerings that I have prescribed for my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by my people Israel?" In this kind of telling of, or in this warning, they didn't separate Eli's sons from Eli. It says, fattening yourselves. So he was getting fat off the offerings, what he possibly shouldn't be having. So he was warned again. Eli was complacent because his relationship with God faded. We need to use the authority in the conversation, so we have to go, because he was a parent, and we have to use God's authority to steer our children right when they are doing wrong. Because if he came to his children and they disregarded anything he said, they just kept on doing what they were doing. We've got to see this. James 4:8 says, "Come near to God and he will come near to you." If you initiate your intimacy with God, he will dwell within you. The rest of the verse says, "Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your heart, you double-minded." We cannot be double-minded when it's God. It's God or nothing. We need to be assured of our relationship so we can exercise authority, so we have access to his power. 2 Timothy 3:5 says this, "Having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof." Having nothing to do with such people. You've got to understand that we cannot be in a position where we are in having a front over God, or having a front in God's house. We need to point that we can exercise his power, but not be at a place where it's just a form. Because we need to know that we are with God and are using his power in situations. Let us not ignore our relationship and not be complacent in our devout prayer towards God. Because studying the word and praying about the word, that goes hand in hand with our relationship with God. Let us never forget that, because prayer is good, but not on its own. We need to read the word of God. We need to bask in its knowledge and its power to edify us so we can continue to have the relationship with God and have it in a more fruitful way, to see the signs and wonders of this world so we can support other people as well. My fourth point, a first conversation with God. Hannah prepared Samuel for a lifetime of service, even before he was conceived. So Samuel was a Levite through his dad Elkanah. So they was the tribe of the priests of Israel. But then also Hannah vowed that Samuel would be a Nazirite as well, when she said, no razor shall touch his head or shall be used on his head. And I did a little bit of research on this Nazirite vow. There are 3 points that I want to bring up. First point, an individual enters into the vow voluntarily. Hannah promised Samuel to God before he was born. Secondly, both men and women can participate in the vow. Samuel was a child. Thirdly, the vow has a specific time frame. Hannah promised Samuel to God for the rest of his life. And I think that's so powerful. But get this, Samuel didn't agree to any of this, but he carried out his duties like he did. Because nowhere does it say that he was crying for his mother. Nowhere does it say that he was misbehaving, even though the example that was in front of him by Hophni and Phinehas, Eli's sons, looking at the terrible things they did in the house of the Lord. But yet still we had Eli, who was a good example, a proportion of that was a good example, but also part of that was a bad example as well, because he didn't use the authority of God to reprimand his sons. But still we see in 2 Samuel 2 verses 26, it says, and the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with the people. With the Lord, so the people could see this boy doing God's will in the tabernacle, doing his duties as he should. And he grew in favor with God. But I look at the situation like this. Samuel's relationship with God, he didn't have a conversation with him yet. But yet still, through his service, he was preparing for this conversation that he will have with God. You know, as our service to God, we need to do it with willingness, with zeal. Sometimes we may get to a point where we think, oh, I'm doing this again. But who are you doing it for? Because the reality, the dedication that you put in to your service to God, like I drive the van. Well, it's not every time I drive the van that I want to drive the van, but I am dedicated to my service to God first. And that puts the foundation for my relationship to be developed within him. We have got to be at a point where we can see our duty. And Samuel was a boy who wore an ephod, the robes of a priest as a boy. And he carried out these duties. God called Samuel 3 times. And Samuel didn't know who was calling him. But he went to Eli as an example to say, well, have you called me? But then Eli's experience of God, he understood, oh, wait a minute, it's God that's calling you. So when you go back to lay down, say this. 1 Samuel 3 verse 9, it says, so Eli told Samuel, go and lay down, and if he calls you, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel went and laid down in his place. Verse 10, the Lord came and stood there, calling as at the other time, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel said, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And this was the conversation, his first conversation with God. after his preparation and his dedication. Young people, new people to Christ, do your service in order to prepare for your relationship. Because not everybody will know how to pray, but as you serve him, your relationship will be developed. We see that Peninnah was distracted from God because her focus and her emotions was on somebody else, not God, in the house of God. Hannah's conversation with God through adversity helped her and Samuel. Eli's conversation with God, or his prayer life with God, faded, that he was punished in the due course of time along with his sons Hophni and Phinehas, because they never had a relationship, a prayer life with God. And Samuel's service was the foundation to his first conversation with God. We have got to be at a point where we have to be available to God at all times. Because this song that I love is, Lord, I'm available to you. My life I give to you. I'll do what you say do. Use me, Lord, to show someone the way, to enable me to say my storage is empty. Because we have to go back and pray to God to be renewed, to be refilled in order to continue. And that's why our daily life needs to be on our knees and praying to God. Let us understand this, that God will renew you if you continue to have a two-way conversation with God. Thank you.
What is buried, you can raise again. What is lifeless, you breathe life within. What seems over to you is not the end. There's nothing that you cannot